when I'm working with people, I think the main thing I'm thinking of is how can I be truly helpful? And if somebody's hurting or going through a lot of pain and suffering, and they say, call me up and they say, can you join with me or help me? Can we pray together or meditate together? Sometimes I will prescribe, not Vicodin or whatever. I'll prescribe a movie.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
I'm Dean Slider.
On the Filmosophers, we talk about film and filmosophy with the people who make and who love the movies. And it is our joy to have as our guest today, David Hoffmeister. And I'll just quickly introduce David. David is a pioneer in the practical application of A Course in Miracles for spiritual enlightenment. David utilizes movies as modern-day parables for awakening. Using his beloved pastime of movie watching, he offers a fresh perspective on the world. Well, David, you've come to the right joint.
Thank you for the invitation. I love these kind of spontaneous, serendipitous interviews that come about. So thank you so much, both of you.
Well, also, we're very grateful to our mutual friend, Rick Archer, yes, on whose podcast, the gas pump, you appeared, and it was Rick's recommendation that you would be a great guest for us. So we're so grateful to him and grateful to you for joining us.
Yeah, he's a very sweet man. He's a good mutual friend.
So want to share with us a little bit about your spiritual journey, because it's such an interesting story, and then we'll segue into movies and your work with the Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment, talk about some of your favorite films, and pepper you with questions along the way.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I kind of eased into spirituality in the ways a lot of people do. I mean, I was raised in a Christian church, kind of a United Church of Christ Christian church, but then I went through a lot of questioning when I was in high school, especially in the 18 to 20 range. In the early 20s at the University of Cincinnati, I was questioning things. And I think the Spirit kind of started to touch my heart more, first of all, through the music. I just was had my heart open up with certain songs that I was just amazed by. And then the movies, I just started to see like real heart-opening movies. And then even movies that shocked me. I thought there's a value in this. Even watching a horror movie has a value because it starts to let me look at what do I believe? What beliefs do I hold? And so eventually about in 1986, I was out at a humanistic psychology conference in La Jolla, California. And I think that was the last talk that Carl Rogers gave. And there was all these transpersonal psychologists and Virginia Satir and lots of, really beautiful thinkers and real sweethearts. And then I came across A Course in Miracles, and I felt like this tsunami of love just washed over me. And I had this kind of strange feeling like my life trajectory would now go in a whole new direction from whatever it was going in or whatever I planned. You know how it's very spontaneous, these spiritual callings, like Mother Teresa on the train in India, who knew? But for me, this was it. And then as I got deeper into that, I started traveling, teaching, going to 44 countries and all around the United States many times, and Canada. And it's just been a joy for me to go on this inner journey. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of how it started.
Perfect. And how did you begin? How did you get the idea to integrate your love of movies with spiritual awakening and spiritual awareness?
I think I got the idea when I was teaching a psychology class in downtown Cincinnati at an art institute called Antonelli Institute. And I had a wide range of students from 18, 19, 20, all the way up to 50, 60-year-olds. They were all at this art institute. And I started to feel their questions, and they have a lot of questions around spirituality. And I started to think, well, maybe I could talk to the director and see if he'd let me show movies and do teaching, because it was a 4-hour class I was teaching, which is kind of unusual. And I started to do it, and they loved it, and so did I. And I would kind of use movies as parables with commentary, and that started me on this. That's how the idea first originated, I think.
David, was there a particular film in this early stage of your involvement that kind of lit the light bulb for you?
Well, let's see, as we go back. I mean, one that really touched my heart was a simple movie that most people know of, was Groundhog Day with Bill Murray.
Mm-hmm.
It somehow had kind of a genuineness about Punxsutawney Phil, and yet it was one of these, I call them like time loop movies, reliving the same day over, which there's quite a lot in that genre
Right.
now. Right. But there's something about it as a teaching device, like it started to spring the mind awareness over, because you could see the same mistakes. He kept stepping in the same puddle every single day. And I thought, and then even the two drunk guys were saying, when he was saying how depressed he was, the two drunk guys with him were saying, "This sounds like my life." And I thought, that really relates. People can relate to that movie. And I liked it as a teaching movie. So I got a spark with that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the drunk guys there, I kind of are. They're like the Greek chorus or something.
Yeah.
And they bring the viewers into the story. That film has always struck me as a pretty, I mean, almost more than a parable. I mean, almost a literal laying out of the idea of rebirth, of life in this universe as a school. And you keep coming back every September. You come back for a new term, and you come back for as many terms as you need until you get it. Until you stop, as you say, making the same mistakes. And it turns out that getting it consists largely in being kind, being generous, being stopping being fixated in me, pulling everything into a small self, which merely reinforces the illusion that you are a small self, that you are a little wave, and you just start giving, making other people happy, and then that you find out, oh, I'm not stuck in being a wave. I'm ocean, and then you don't have to keep coming back as wave.
Yeah.
You know what? I just would comment what I loved about that movie too. What I thought was so brilliant. I just thought the trajectory of consequence, of progression, was so wonderful. At how it starts with confusion, and then the incredulity, and then the hubris, and godlike invincibility,
Mm-hmm.
and then boredom and ennui, and then egoic, fulfilling, one's desires, or wanting something, the Andy McDowell, the object of his, desire. Yeah. And then ultimately just letting go of that and just being in the flow.
just being.
Yeah. Just being. It is the it's the kind of the standard bearer, isn't it? For that genre.
Yeah. I think too, I enjoy movies that they kind of take you in and people can relate to. And like you said, it takes you somehow without even being conscious of it. It opens you up. And I know that's the way it's been for spirituality with me. I was not only interested in A Course in Miracles, I was interested in quantum physics. I was interested in Eastern philosophy and the Advaita Vedanta and all kinds of non-dual teachers. But quantum physics, I really lit up. And then I started seeing movies, I think that I would say are more like quantum movies, like that movie Next with Nicolas Cage. People go through that movie, and then when they reach the point where he is laying on the bed with his girlfriend, and then he looks up and it kind of zeroes into his face. And then the rest of the movie is showing that everything that happened before that, including Los Angeles blowing up with a nuclear device, was a was like a hypothetical vision. And he starts again on the process of learning to join with the FBI agent and to forgive. So I found movies like Mr. Nobody that when I watched it, people would say, "What is that movie? That's not, it doesn't have like a plot. You can't have a movie without a plot." And I said, "It's a quantum movie. It goes so deep." Or like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you know how the movie kind of goes circular, and then at the end of the movie, you're saying, "Wait a minute, where did the movie begin?" You know, it didn't have a storyline, beginning, middle, end, plot. So I find that's how I start to use movies, and I kind of draw movies toward me that are good teaching devices for more of a quantum way at looking at the world.
One of the things that I like about your approach, and cause it's like my approach, is is to focus not so much on films where there's an overt spiritual content. When I started writing Cinema Nirvana, a lot of people said, "Oh, you're writing a book about spirituality in movies. Gee, you got to write about this one and this one and everything." And I basically kept a list of everything they told me to write about and made a point not to write about any of those, because I figured if they're seeing it, then there's no game there. That's not fun. It's too overt. There's nothing for me to do. So I deliberately picked films. Probably the film that I wrote about, and I know it's one of your favorites, the film that I wrote about that comes closest to having overt spiritual or non-dual content, Enlightenment content, is The Truman Show. But the others are all Jaws, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Casablanca, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like the more impossible it seems for it to have spiritual content, the better. There's more fun in store.
Yeah, I could totally see that. It's funny because I never know what's coming as far as a movie suggestion, and I have so much fun when it's way out of the box and people's eyebrows go up. Mm-hmm. And like, you're gonna what? You're talking about what? And then I'm like you. I love the adventure of that, like of going into it and saying, "Let's look together and see what we can see."
Yeah, and it's because, I say this over and over again as a teacher. If the infinite is the infinite, it's got to be everywhere. Otherwise, it ain't the infinite. If I say the infinite is everywhere except this one little corner of the whole universe except this one little corner of my iPhone, then that can't be. And then my touchstone kind of is this great Zen story where the monk says to the Roshi, "What is the Buddha?" Right? Not who is the Buddha, what is the Buddha? Meaning, what is the ultimate reality? What is enlightenment? And the Roshi answers not, "Oh, the Buddha is the beautiful sunset," or the Buddha is the golden temple, both of which also would be correct. But he says the Buddha is a pile of cow poo in the middle of the road, right? Because that's more useful. That's because if you can see it there, you see it everywhere.
Yeah, that's it. We have to be able to see the sameness of the spirit everywhere we look. So I totally can relate to that, and that's why with the movies, that's why I see them as masterpieces and modern day parables, and I'm just there to enjoy the fullness of the movie and see what we all can see together and rejoice together in our insights. I like that approach.
Yeah, and also I like what I'm getting from you is that it's got to be a good movie. It's got to stand up artistically. I've seen this sometimes. When people get excited about their spiritual path but they don't happen to be blessed with a lot of artistic skill, and they think, well, okay, if I strum my guitar and sing a song about how groovy enlightenment is, that'll be a great song because enlightenment is great. But no, it's got to be a great song on its own merits.
Well, the infinite's there too. Even in the bad song.
Yeah. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's fun.
Doesn't mean you have to like it. Well, right. I have a question.
Wait.
Go ahead.
I got no. You know, in my book, you're right, Chris. The infinite is there in the bad art as well, and I deliberately included one chapter on a film I hate, a terrible film, which is Independence Day.
Oh,
Independence Day. That thing sucks. But in spite of itself, it's still got the Dharma there.
Oh, it's kitsch. Independence Day is great.
No, it's not. No, you're wrong again, Chris.
Oh, come on.
No.
It's got goofy Jeff Goldblum. It's got Harvey Fierstein. It's got Bill Pullman giving a rousing, cliched speech. You know.
No, it's not. It's not witty enough to be kitsch.
It's ridiculous. But hey. I'm sorry. To see the White House and the Empire State Building blow up.
Well, that was pretty cool.
That was.
Well, that was cooler before January 6th.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, back to my question for you.
No fun for you.
For you, David, and for you, Dean. Okay. Shakuna some good. I'll talk to people sometimes that, they'll ask me, well, you don't watch horror movies, do you? You don't watch like slasher films or dark things. I'll say, well, yeah, I do. I mean, I'm not particularly proud of it, but I like all genres. And I like I like the funhouse, scary roller coaster ride movies. But there's this idea that, of course, what you put your attention on grows stronger in your life. And, do you want to be exposing yourself to certain images or certain certain things that some may perceive as negative? I'm a little more democratic in my, but I think it's very personal, and I don't judge people who are very choosy about the things they watch. What is your feeling about that point?
Well, I say for myself and for others I meet that I think people don't want to be like jolted so far out of their comfort zone that it's traumatic, or they feel scarred by watching something like Freddy Krueger or Nightmare on Elm Street or something. But actually I think your deeper question is what is my view on it? And I would say that I see that our human experience is an opportunity to clear the filter of our mind away from opinions and preconceptions and judgments, and open up to something that's infinite and something that's all loving and all inclusive. So I see anything as being an opportunity to look at what am I feeling here? What's going on in my consciousness? And is there a way I can open myself up and crack open and heal my mind, heal my consciousness. So in that sense, I certainly have not pushed away anything that comes to me. You got to see this movie, and so on and so forth. I will take that from a friend and say, okay, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to see where I'm at with it emotionally, and use it as a practice, as part of my, like an open-eyed Zen meditation. I'm going to go to the movie theater and have those eyes open and not be hiding myself away. I want to heal. I want to feel the healing happening.
In the iconic representation of the Buddha, I got one on my altar there. I don't know if you can see him. Mm-hmm. But he's holding with one hand he's touching the earth, and there's a whole story about that. And with the other hand, he's holding the begging bowl. And that has the literal meaning because he was a monk and they'd go around with their begging bowls. But the metaphorical meaning, the kind of standard interpretation, is that as a begging monk, you were required to eat anything that was dropped into your bowl. I mean, it was, literally beggars can't be choosers. And that really is the model for exactly what you're saying. That's the model for how to meditate, not the oh, the incense smoke is good, but the dog barking across the street is bad. I have to block that out, or I have to block out thoughts, or all these very unskillful ways that people try to meditate. You just have to be open and receptive, like the begging bowl, and just digest. Eat and digest, metabolize whatever's there, and it's how to meditate, and ultimately it's how to live.
Yeah, yeah.
It's different flavors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Different flavors in the baking bowl and
Yeah.
on the screen, on the cinema
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
The idea of the cinema, going to the movies also as a parable for reality, perception of reality has been widely used. And even I remember reading in some of the dialogues of Ramana Maharshi, who's one of my dear ones, one of my favorites. He uses it. They used it fairly frequently. I think the idea of, going to the cinema and the screen is white. The images apparently, are apparent on the screen, but they're just the light flashing through the celluloid, giving the illusion of movement and reality. Any reflections on that? You too, Dean, that you would share, both of you?
Well, to me, that goes back to Plato's cave analogy, which I use hundreds of times to help people kind of have an idea that we don't need to really react and respond to the images. It's more like we interpret what we're perceiving, and then we react to our interpretation or judgment of it. So metaphysically, that's part of what I do with my teachings around the world and working with students, is say, you have a choice, because you can interpret things as fearful, but maybe there's something that's beyond that, a higher interpretation of the spirit that will bring you peace. And let's find that together. Let's go on a journey together to find that peaceful interpretation, and not believe that we're just a victim of the world, of an external world that seems to be outside of consciousness. Because I'm teaching, no, it's all part of our consciousness. We're just going through a purification of the filter.
I love that too. That attitude is of not rejecting anything, but you can transmute everything into a kind of a higher value. Dean, do you have a?
Yeah, I think it really is remarkable how precisely Plato anticipated cinema in his allegory of the cave. This idea that these people have lived their whole lives in the cave. They're chained with their heads looking in one position, and there's the fire behind them. They don't see the fire, and the little puppets in front of the fire casting the shadows on the wall. That's sitting in the darkened theater watching the movie. But there is something about the mechanics of that, and the mechanics of sitting in the darkened theater. Yesterday, for my birthday, my wife and I went to LACMA here, the LA County Museum of Art. They've got a wonderful show on the origins of cinema in Paris, and the first short films by the Lumiere brothers and Georges Méliès and the Gaumont and the others were just, like in music halls along with all the other acts. And then after a little while, they realized, no, there's such a demand. We need dedicated movie theaters. And now we're losing that, because now, we're all going to, just sitting in your living room and streaming this stuff on TV. Which has certain advantages, including you don't have this dope taking 20 minutes sitting behind you to open their, rustling their candy wrapper. But to me, there's something very magical about sitting in the darkened theater. I mean, not only mechanically, it's there so that the image on the screen will be brighter, but when you're in the darkened room, your body disappears. So that facilitates you stopping identifying with your so-called self. You stop identifying as Dean or Chris or David, and you identify with George Clooney or whoever's up on the screen, and that has to happen for the film to work. That has to, so that when George is in danger, your heart pounds, and then when George triumphs, you feel good. Why should you feel scared or triumphant over the adventures of a flat two-dimensional fictional character who occasionally has a big head filling the screen and sometimes is a tiny figure on a mountain range? You have to stop identifying with your usual self and identify with someone else. And to me, that's a parable, ultimately a wake up of, oh, well, maybe the way, I identified with George for 2 hours and then more light came on, right? Like at the end of the parable, the allegory of the cave, when we emerge from the cave, more light comes on. I see, oh, in a higher reality, I'm not really George, right? I'm Dean. Okay, now that's settled. But then, what's the reality higher than that?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. That right there. I never even thought of the body and the darkness disappearing, but that is just an amazing symbol right there of where the transcendence is heading. Yeah.
It was great. Dean, you'd make a great guest on this show. that was really nice.
He's got that birthday energy. He's all fired up.
That's all in the book, by the way. That's
yeah.
that thing struck me in 2005 when I wrote this thing.
Yeah.
One of you were kind enough to list for us a few of your favorite films, and one of them I'll just mention because it is Groundhog Day-esque, is a movie I had not seen, but I watched last night called Before I Fall with Zoe Deutsch.
Yes.
And it's like a young adult teenage version of Groundhog Day. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it is kind of the same idea of it's quite very different in its execution and the story it tells and the moral of the story, but it really was, I thought, very nicely done. And as Dean says, I think it's a tight wire act for creative types to fulfill, kind of present a message in a movie and have it be artistically well integrated also, because sometimes it's one or the other, but I thought this was very thoughtfully and tastefully done. I thought it was kind of a beautiful kind of presentation of a young person's transformation and from selfishness to selflessness.
Yeah,
beautiful.
I really appreciated that too, because the Groundhog Day, we have Phil the weatherman and Rita, but with this taking place with high school aged people, it just was fantastic because of all the peer pressure and the pressure for sex and drugs and rock and roll and being liked so strong. That's in the peer pressure there, and then to have this big transformation of forgiveness, of starting to say, why am I so invested in judging this one person? And in the end, that person seems to be the one that comes through as she says, no, you saved me. The very one she was judging and that was the huge outcast becomes the savior. So I particularly like those looping movies, but I like the nuances, like you're saying, of Before I Fall. That touches my heart every time I watch it.
Did you see the movie Palm Springs with Andy Samberg that came out a few years ago?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed that.
That's a time loop movie too. Did you see it? You saw it, Dean?
I did, yes.
I thought that was funny and brilliant and clever, and I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Share with us a little. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, David. So also on your list is Solaris.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's been two versions. There's the classic 1972 Russian version, and then which won all kinds of honors at Cannes and I think Venice Film Festival. And then there was a George Clooney, speaking of, a George Clooney remake. What are your thoughts about Solaris?
Well, I think the script, Soderheim, and was amazing. But I used to say for years when I was traveling around the world that I said if you were on a stranded island and you had one last request before you were leaving leaving
Hmm.
the world, uh, just try Solaris as your final request, because to me the name Solar is light is.
Hmm.
It's the name is pointing to the reality of this
Hmm.
amazing light that's beyond this world. And then I saw it as a teaching movie because Chris Kelvin and played by George Clooney, going up there and then discovering that there's these creatures that are really just versions of the past, that are like unforgiven aspects of the mind that keep showing up. And then the surrender, we have to quit blaming our partners, quit blaming our parents and our surroundings, and finally go into that light, which the ship kept coming closer to that light planet Solaris.
Hmm.
I have used that as a teaching device because I just think it's like a masterpiece. It's very slow moving, methodical, but I think it, for me, it just was one of my all-time classics for spiritual
Hmm.
awakening.
Have you seen the Russian version?
I think I saw part of it, but I don't think I saw the full one.
It's really slow moving. I actually watched it last night, and it's really interesting because it's like right on the edge between just fascinating and brilliant and like unbearable, right? But I mean, the opening shot is seaweed undulating in a pond, and it just goes on for a couple of minutes before we finally see the character who turns out to be the Chris Kelvin character contemplating, and there's just a whole lot of moody, pensive shots. At one point, another character he's in a cab on a highway, which for some reason suddenly all the signs are in Chinese, and we're just the cab going through tunnels, and we're suddenly in black and white for some reason, and this goes on for, I don't know, about 10 minutes, and it's just like this is like a really cool pile of cow poo in the middle of the road.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I'll
but
keep that
but
in mind.
but
Thanks
but
for the,
yeah, but do check it out. I would love actually to follow up and
yeah,
and see how you like, and I'll
cool.
watch the George Clooney version.
Okay, cool.
I think a person's taste in movies is very revealing of them, first of all. And I know you recommend movies to people um, based on maybe issues they're experiencing, or resolutions they need to try to find. Is that correct with with part of your work and consulting?
Yeah, I kind of join with them. It's almost like doing one-on-one spiritual psychotherapy. And then if I see they're open to audio-visual medium and they really are like that, then I'll just let a guidance come through. If I maybe you should watch this movie, let me know how it feels. I think it's all based for me on the spiritual journey is on finding a lasting peace and joy and happiness. I have used this book called A Course in Miracles, and what this is, it's kind of like Christian Vedanta, or it's almost like Christian Buddhism, because I think a lot of us, when we think of Christianity, we think of, duality, heaven and hell, and the good things, good behaviors and the bad behaviors, and the blessings and the punishments. But this book is really in line with the great non-dual text of the world. So to me, that was my journey into this. And this is all really about changing your perception of the world. So you have 100% responsibility for your state of mind, 100% responsibility for what you're feeling, uh, 0% blaming, 0% pointing the finger and saying, you make me feel this way, you hurt my feelings. These are the teachings of Jesus Christ put in a mind training program with psychological words, with educational words, and with philosophical, huge philosophical things. It's kind of like Ramana Maharshi for Christians, and with a practical daily, lesson. So when I'm working with people, I think the main thing I'm thinking of is how can I be truly helpful? And if somebody's hurting or going through a lot of pain and suffering, and they say, call me up and they say, can you join with me or help me? Can we pray together or meditate together? Sometimes I will prescribe not Vicodin or whatever. I'll prescribe a movie. Why don't you check this one out? And then they really sometimes have amazing experiences with the movie that I suggest.
They can be transformative, no question.
Yeah.
And transform perception. And Dean?
Yeah, just take a double bill and call me in the morning.
Right.
Do you ever ask any of your clients what some of their favorite films are as a means to diagnose, or not diagnose, but maybe have maybe an understanding of where they, because, sometimes it's like what you're drawn to, what you favor, what you find attractive or interesting is revealing of your own kind of psychic situation.
Yeah. I think that's the case. I think what happened was I just was doing it because I enjoyed it so much. And then the more people found out about it, then people would say, well, why don't you stay with me when you're traveling? And then when we'd be having breakfast or dinner, they would say, I know you like the movies. Have you seen this one? Have you seen this one? Just through natural enthusiasm. And then people started sharing their music with me, their movies with me. And then once I got into kind of doing it in, I'd say, more of a spiritual use of the movies, then people started coming from all over the world. Oh, you haven't seen this Spanish movie. Have you seen this Russian movie? I kind of have a global audience I work with. So that happens a lot. People will feed me a huge diet of movies to look at. And I'm so grateful.
Nice. Well, I found your choices so interesting too, because you shared with us some of your favorite films, as we mentioned, Solaris, Before I Fall, and The Giver, Mr. Nobody, Truman Show, and not to diagnose you, but what I saw was like I felt a common element. The protagonist, in each of these films, it's like the protagonist is in the world but not of the world.
Yes.
Does that describe you a little bit? Because you're in the world, and you've really you've dedicated yourself to kind of transforming your awareness to reflect a deeper truth, I think.
Yeah, that describes me very well, because I think that's even part of the core of Christianity: be in the world but not of it. Be giving, be transforming, live the Beatitudes, be happy and joyful, and let your light shine. Don't hide it under a bushel. Those were even traditional Christian values, but to me, the movies, they show you, even in terms of what people might call a horror movie. I don't know if either of you saw Dark City, filmed down in Australia, but
Yes.
To me, that was so beautiful, because even though when I first saw it, I was in a dark movie theater like Dean was talking about, and I was like with a friend of mine, and we were both seeing the same insights, and we were doing high fives. There's only like 5 of us in the movie theater, and we were doing high fives, and the other people in the theater were looking at us like they were watching a horror movie, and we were seeing things that we were ready to see, I guess. And that's kind of the way it goes. It doesn't matter how, it was only in theaters for like 3 days and it was gone. That was the shortest running movie I've seen around these parts, but I found it tremendously helpful.
There's a moment in the Truman Show early on that's kind of a key moment where he's been living his life there in his little, wonderful world, not suspecting that he's really the star of a 24/7 reality show, and that his whole world is inside this dome near the Hollywood sign.
Yeah.
And it's all being directed by this godlike director who is, Ed Harris in a beret. But the key moment is when this object suddenly falls on the ground right at his feet, and he picks it up, and it's a light, it's a movie light, and it's marked like Sirius X3 or something. It's one of the stars from his sky has fallen. And it's like there's this moment when you were kind of telling your origin story. I know there was a point that was kind of that moment for you where it's like, wait, there's something here in my old model that doesn't add up. There's something that's not working. There's got to be a bigger reality outside this dome I've been living in. And I think for most people, there's got to be some kind of moment like that. Something where, the old thing's not working. And often it'll come in, depending on how thick your skull is, for a lot of people, it has to come as a crisis. Like, okay, my old model was, I'm going to be married to this person forever. We're going to live happily ever after. Everything's going to be great all the time. And which is such an artificial construct that, that one's just cruising for a bruising.
Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, but you strike me as a person who, and I was like this also. I was fortunate in that I didn't have to have a lot of heavy anvils hit me on the head before I started to pay attention to spirit. That there was kind of some predilection for it already.
Yeah, I think most of us get like little clues. We start to get little clues that there's something more. There's something much beyond what we know. And most of us have had kind of little clues and gradual things. And then some of us have a big wham, like some of us get hit by the spiritual 2x4,
right.
Wham, right between the eyes. I'm thinking of that Scarlett Johansson movie, Lucy, where, she's just a girlfriend and she's over in Taiwan, she's a student, and then this drug gets put into her stomach, that she's like a mule, a runner for that, unbeknownst to her. And then when that breaks open, when she gets kicked in the stomach, then that's like a kind of an ayahuasca experience, only with this blue powder. And then she's totally transformed and continues to transform, with Morgan Freeman giving us commentary on 10% of the human brain and 20% and 30 and 40 and 50. And I find that to be a helpful teaching device, because I think sometimes the extreme examples in those spiritual 2x4s can actually speed up and accelerate our spiritual journey in a helpful way. So I totally see that. I think of the movie The Island too, with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson, where the whole beginning of the movie is, it looks like they're all wearing white uniforms and the tubes, and they're just doing their whole thing. And then all of a sudden, when they get out, they realize there's a whole other world, and they're told that they're clones. And there's like, clones? What do you mean clones? I have memories of my mother, and I have memories of a Flexi Flyer, bicycle. And then everything starts to crack open for them spiritually, because it's such a big contrast. And I think I had my contrast along the way, maybe not like in Lucy, but I had enough of them that it just took me in a new direction.
Yep. For a lot of people I don't know how old you are, but in my generation, that was the 2x4 was psychedelics. That was a 2x4 that was hard to ignore.
Yeah, Timothy Leary, Ram Dass,
yeah. Some people did manage eventually to will themselves to forget what they had seen.
Yeah.
But others realized no. There's no going back to the old two-dimensional model.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Actually, there's a passage in one of the Carlos Castaneda books. I think it's at the beginning of Tales of Power, where Castaneda comes back and finds his teacher, the brujo, the shaman Don Juan in the desert, All of which later turned out to be, debunked as a, complete fictional creation, but what the hell? There's some great stories there, but this one I particularly like. So this is like the fourth or fifth book in the series, and so at this point Castaneda's had all these adventures with Don Juan, from taking these substances and flying through the air and doing this and that, and he comes back and he says, I've been writing and analyzing everything, and I'm starting to suspect that this bigger reality you're showing me has nothing to do with the substances. And Don Juan says, yeah, that's right. And he says, well, then why did you make me take them? He says, because you're stupid.
Whatever is necessary.
Yeah, whatever's necessary. And I think of the thick fog of the 50s, the Eisenhower years, kind of made the 60s necessary. And he did something to penetrate.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I revisit for a minute the Truman Show with Jim Carrey, directed by Peter Weir and with Ed Harris? And that movie was quite a remarkable film in, the idea of depicting one person's delusion, and that it's collectively orchestrated, right? It's really, as I thought about it, when I watched it, I thought about, paranoiacs who believe that, right, they're being watched, or that the world that there's, a conspiracy going on, or that there's collective agreement among strangers to orchestrate affairs in their life. And I thought, well, that's just really, in a way, it's the flip side of a deeper reality. I felt that's really illuminated in the Truman Show, about the self-referral nature of reality, that everyone exists within our perception, everything and everyone, and how you integrate that reality without really going crazy.
Yeah. But that in the awakened or the enlightened version of that model, it's all working, instead of it working to keep us miserable and enslaved. It's there to help wake us up. There's a line in one of Salinger's books where Seymour Glass, who is his enlightened sage from the streets of Manhattan, writes, I think in his journal, he says, I think I'm a paranoiac in reverse. I suspect everyone of conspiring to make me happy.
Well, that is it. That, to me, that I had never heard that, but that is really quite an insight, because I think that the illness of paranoia, where it's the other, and the other is maybe there to do me harm, is that, and I think of like Byron Katie, who says that, one of my influences says, the universe is for you. Everything is for you. And I'm sure that's one of the great lessons of Course of Miracles and the teachings you've grown to internalize, David. Share with us a little bit about just kind of that angle.
Well, I teach, and the Course teaches, that reality is one. And that's that oneness that we appreciate in all the great spiritual teachings and sages and mystics. And it teaches that we have believed that in an ego, which is the belief in private minds and private thoughts. So it's as if we have 7.8 billion people. And if I go a little step beyond billion people, 7.8 billion separate little slices of consciousness that each have their own preferences and their own blinders on to, as Dean was saying at the beginning, and you were saying, the me, such a focus on the personality self that everything becomes about looking out for the personality self. So I find it fascinating with movies like The Truman Show, where he actually follows his intuition and his heart toward an exit door. which is great because I think that's what people want. But I do agree with Dean that it's like an agent of it's a flipping things around to see that, wow, everything was really working for me, as Byron Katie says, but I didn't see it. Before I thought the glass was half empty and people were conspiring to get me. But then suddenly, with a shift in perception, I start to feel gratitude. Thank you all for playing your part perfectly, like a Woody Allen movie where everybody stands and applauds. All the characters applaud at the end of the movie, saying thank you for playing your part perfectly. So Truman Show it's like a masterpiece of catching our attention to that very issue.
There's a wonderful bit of dialogue when Truman finally confronts the director character, the Ed Harris character, and he says to him, "Who are you?" And he says something like, "I am the creator of a TV show enjoyed by millions of people worldwide." And Truman says, "Well, then who am I?" He says, "You're the star." Right? It's like, okay, it's all up to us. And then there's another bit where Truman says, where he realizes that it's all this constructed world of artifice he's been living in, and he says, was nothing real? And the director says, "You were. That's what made you so good to watch." Yeah. And I connect that with his other, when he starts, because his whole thing is he lives in these patterns, and when he starts to break out of the patterns, and he says, he at one point he shouts in this kind of gleeful, sarcastic way, "Somebody help me! I'm being spontaneous." And there's that value of authenticity for breaking out of the patterns that keep us stuck in our old model.
Yeah. I think that we need these movies to kind of be reinforcements of this thing that we've, with Advaita Vedanta, with the Course in Miracles, it's basically teaching what East and West both teaches, that the world is Maya. Now, Jesus in A Course in Miracles, he has a whole section called The Hero of the Dream. And that's what Christoph was saying. You were the star. We all get caught up in the heroism, but there is a lesson beyond the heroism, which is that we're dreaming a dream that we believe is real. It's really Maya, but it seems real while we're believing in it, while we're identified with the characters. So to me, I'd like that Jesus finally, 20 centuries after he was here, he gave us a mind training program that's practical, that I can practice one lesson a day. Starts off lesson number 1, workbook. Nothing I see means anything. Oh, thank you for that, my lesson, lead off lesson number 1. And then it goes from there to basically say, you are not of this world. You have a divine creator. You're a divine being. You're pure divine light, but you believe in the Maya, and it's bringing you suffering, grief, jealousy, pain, and he's, realistically helping us train our minds, like all the great mystics and saints. Ram Dass, he loved his guru. His guru did the LSD thing, with the little suitcase or whatever that he had, and took all the LSD and was unfazed. And if you're a psychiatrist and there's somebody standing in front of you that's just swallowed a bunch of LSD and are completely unfazed, that's a pretty strong symbol for like a Eastern school psychiatrist. So I think we need these movies, because we need the training. And I have fun with movies. I enjoy them. This is a form of meditation for me. When I, like you, going for your birthday, that's where I'm going. If I have the chance, I'm going to watch the movie.
It is great. I think that just what you were saying, Dean, too, that idea, and David, that how the Truman Show, one of the few movies I can think of that illuminates that idea in a really just such a brilliant way, that, here he is, he's living this ordinary life, in a world that's engineered. He doesn't know it. Everyone else is acting a different part. He's acting a part too, but he's playing the part of Truman.
Yeah. But he's the true man.
He's the real deal.
He's the true man. And his wife is named Meryl, and his best friend, his best buddy is Marlon.
Yeah,
and so they're named after the two great actors.
They're all actor names
because they're all actors. Yeah.
But how that that idea that I think in the arc of awakening, you go from playing your part but not being kind of hip to the game, or not knowing that you're playing that part, and then in the transformation you can realize you're the star of your own show, and it can be overwhelming, and then the art or trick of learning to be ordinary again.
Yeah.
That yes, you are Dean, you are special, just like everyone else,
just like everybody else. Yeah,
right. but it's so beautiful how it just illustrates that deep kind of reality.
Yeah. And again, this was one of the problems brought on by the age of psychedelics, is when people kind of were just, rather than gradually and incrementally over a period of years waking up out of the dream and being able to integrate that awakening into their lives, just, in 45 minutes or something, suddenly you're thrown out of the dream. And a lot of people never learned how to reintegrate. It's like, okay, this is all bullshit. This is all illusion, and didn't incrementally learn how. Yeah, okay, it's all a movie, but as you realize that, what you do is you're playing a role in it. You just learn to play your role impeccably, and you can play it more impeccably because, unlike most of the other characters you're dealing with, you're seeing beyond it.
Yeah. So like we have the opportunity. I always think one of the brightest lights in history was William Shakespeare. Because he built his own theater. He wrote things. He hired actors. He did sonnets, and he said all the world's the stage, and everyone must play their part. And I think he knew that there was some reality beyond what the five senses were showing us. And he tried to expose whatever the darkness was. He did his best in Macbeth and all the movies that he wrote to kind of help us all see that darkness within ourselves and start to let it go. And I agree with you, Dean. Psychedelics just sped the whole thing up. For a whole generation, it's like nobody really knew what to do after things cracked wide open. It's like, right. Now what? What's the next step?
Exactly.
How do we integrate?
Yeah. Who's gonna show us the way? Who's the leader? I mean, Tim Leary. I mean, not that lunatic.
Well, it's the journey to become, and I love that Truman, true man.
Yeah.
Truman. It's becoming the true man.
Yeah.
Well, I think, David, you're playing your part brilliantly. No one could have done David Hoffmeister as well as you.
I think it's delightful, though, because I think right now, all three of us having this beautiful conversation is part of the integration. We're doing our part. And I hope people who watch this feel as much fun and joy as we feel, sharing our love of the movies and our curiosities. And I learned so much just from being with both of you. I will take that thing about the dark theater and the body disappears. I all these years, and I still find these beautiful gems popping out when I join with people in heart-to-heart talk like this. So I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much to both of you.
Well, you provided a wonderful wrap-up.
Without even trying.
Thank you for doing the wrap-up. Well, David Hoffmeister, thank you so much for joining us. Really delightful. Really, really grateful that you could join us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay up to date on our newest episodes.